Hello and welcome back to another Amy Harrill episode with Amy Harrill, star guest and co-host. Last week, Amy, we spoke to the meaty topics of processes, and you alluded to your love-hate relationship with ants and how you've learned an important lesson from them.
Yeah.
Do tell, what is this
Yes.
love-hate relationship you have?
Oh my goodness. Okay. There is an ancient proverb, Sherman, that says for us to observe the ant. Like, how does this little bug that has no king, no queen, no master, no leader, how does it just come out of its egg and just start knowing what to do? It is so focused on two things. There's only two things that ants live for. They live to reproduce themselves, duplicate. It's so ingrained in them to work and to have enough of them to be able to have food in the winter. When the babies are still in the eggs, they have to stay at a certain temperature. So all of the tunnels that you see below the anthill, you know, those nasty ant hills in your yard, things that you just want to kick and make crazy. If you only knew the system, the sophisticated system that is underneath there, it's actually as tall as a 6-foot man. And they can build
Whoa,
that thing in 2 days.
that's
And so
incredible.
isn't that incredible? And so what they do with these little baby eggs is that there is a team of ants that are responsible to keep their temperature good so that they don't
Yeah.
die. So they're
Okay.
moving them around. And then there's a group that are always working. And then they've got this throughput system in their tunnels that helps them stay safe while they're moving the food. And then you've got these queens that all they do is produce more babies, right? So they're
Okay.
only responsible for two things: duplicating themselves. And that is not the life of a business owner. I'm not sure what else there is to compare to. We've got to constantly be duplicating ourselves, and we have got to make a living. And so I started to study the ant, and I realized, man, okay, if they're only doing those two things, they have a system that if the system gets shut down, they can go somewhere else and just restart it in a matter of 2 days. And so many owners, Sherman, and I was one of these. I lost my first business because of this behavior. We get into business to be able to write our paycheck, work when we want to, have the freedom and flexibility that we don't have as an employee, but we somehow find ourselves chained to some desk in our house from 7 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. We've got weight debt, we've got time debt, we're running out of money, and we're starting to question, is it worth it? And people are just telling us, you've got to systemize, you need processes, you need to do all these things. When I would put before us that really all we need is what we talked about last week. We need a system to always be duplicating the ideal client, and we need a system to always be duplicating ourselves. That's it. And the only way to know if that's happening is managing a process. And you can only manage processes by numbers. And that's what I really am excited to talk to you about today.
What? I can't manage the process by gut feel?
I tried,
By
and
the
I almost,
rumbly?
how many times have you caught yourself doing that? Been there, done that, man. There's so many owners
That's
that I
right.
talk to that just say, look, there's just some decisions you have to make from a numbers point of view. You cannot lead this decision by feeling. And then there's some decisions you need to evaluate the feeling side of it. But the stuff we're talking about, processes, managing those processes, duplicating the ideal client, duplicating yourself over and over, must be made from a very lean set of numbers.
What are those numbers? What are those, as we like to call in the business, KPIs or metrics?
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you said KPI and metric in the same sentence. Because here is the reality: is what I'm about to tell you is about as clear as mud. So I'm going to really make this as simple as possible. So there is a big
Okay.
difference between a KPI, which is a key performance indicator, and a metric. So a metric is a static number. It's a measure of something at a point in time. So for example, a
Okay.
metric would be my age, my weight, the amount of money in
And
my
that age
wallet.
never changes over the years, right?
No,
That
of
age
course
stays
it
the same
doesn't.
through the decades.
I know it's hard to believe I'm a day over 23.
I know. It's a static metric.
But it is at a point in time, right? It changes,
Mhm.
but it's only measuring something at one point in time. And these are all static figures. And so they don't change themselves. They are what they are. You hit the next year and it is the number that it is. You cannot change it.
Mm.
And so a KPI, a key performance indicator, is a metric, but it actually is measuring something against something else. And so it's
Mm.
more than a static metric. So a KPI
Mhm.
measures achievement, it measures growth, it measures success within a process or within a system. Following me? So every KPI is a metric, Sherman, but not every metric is a KPI. I don't know if you remember this because I did not remember it. There's this elementary math rule that a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. So a square fits the definition of a rectangle
Mm.
because it has four sides. However, a rectangle cannot then meet the definition of a square because to be
That's
a
right.
square, you must not only have four sides, but the four sides also must be congruent. This is why a
Mhm.
KPI is a metric, but not all metrics are KPIs. So there is a set
Mhm.
of KPIs that we have to attend to. And I'm going to give those to you at a very high level. I'm not going to dive into them. If you guys really want to know what those
Mhm.
are, then make sure you tell us and we'll break them down maybe over the course of a couple of weeks. First KPI would be your gross margin. Your gross
Okay.
margin is very important. You need to keep it at 60% or higher. And if you're
Mhm.
below that, then you're losing money. The
Okay.
second KPI is a set of marketing metrics. Third KPI is your time efficiency key performance indicator, which includes your labor hours. So I have labor
Mhm.
hours for myself, even though it's just me and two contractors, but
Right.
I have a set of labor hours for myself. So I can tell you exactly how long it's going to take me to acquire a new client organically. And I can tell you exactly how
Mhm.
much it's going to cost me to acquire a new client through advertising. That's what
Okay.
KPIs allow me to do. Another KPI that's really important is going to be any sort of time KPI that has to deal with conversion. So the conversion to an actual client is a KPI that we
Mhm.
have to watch very closely. And finally, what is
Okay.
your actual conversion number? So those are the numbers that
Mhm.
really matter the most. And I would be so curious, Sherman, to know how many viewers have maybe hired a metric company or a KPI company or have hired a consultant and they've given them like 70 metrics, even 17
Mhm.
metrics. Because that's
Mhm.
really how they rope us in and keep us for long periods of time. But actually, the KPIs I just told you about are really the only ones that matter. Why? Because
Yeah.
they measure the two most important and the two highest returning investments of the business, the marketing processes and the model processes, the actual delivery of the service or the product.
That's rich. Once again, like last week, it takes a week to chew on what you're sharing. Then we can digest it and then get ready for another full buffet dinner.
Really
It's
need
a
one
very,
rich
very
meal a week.
delicious Michelin star crispy ants meal. This is incredible, Amy. I must imagine that the clients that you consult, when they see this, first of all, it's wow, this is amazing. And then secondly, they're probably thinking, holy smokes, how am I going to measure this? And
Yeah.
before it probably takes a while to get that into a pattern or habit for them. And for
Oh,
those that
yeah.
aren't
N-
realizing these metrics are like, first time I've heard this.
The work is so simple. It's helping people stop doing things that they think are valuable to focus on the
Mhm,
things that are proven to be valuable. And so there is
mhm,
a bit of a I have to give them the time and the space to make those decisions themselves, and I can't rush that process for them. And that is the hardest
mhm.
part, is the mindset shifting and the behavioral change and the accepting that, oh, there's a set of habits that I'm going to have to change.
I'm just looking at what you just shared, even just with that time efficiency and labor hours
Mhm,
concept or metric
mhm,
KPI, sorry.
mhm,
And I know countless colleagues of mine, A, we don't count labor hours. B,
mhm.
we underestimate how many labor hours we put in.
That's right.
We chalk it up to this is not work. This is our passion. We love what we do. We
Mhm.
have flat butt syndrome because we're sitting so long working on what we need to work on. And we can't, it's actually demoralizing when we count actual labor hours that we put into a project because it
Yeah,
turns out to be like minimum wage.
exactly. That's exactly what happens. And then you end up negotiating time for money because you're not really sure how long it's going to take. And I love how you called it flat butt syndrome. That's awesome. Love that. And honest to goodness, if you do not know how long it takes you to acquire a client or to do the work for a client, then I guarantee you're being underpaid and overworked.
Totally spot on. I don't think anyone really even needs to calculate. It would be shocking and, like I said, demoralizing to calculate it. But just by gut feel, I'm
Oh,
spending
yeah.
way too long on this
Yeah.
project or all my projects.
I actually took these numbers and hired a software engineer to put them into a document that all my clients get. They can actually put in, I want X
Mm,
amount of clients or I have X amount of projects, and it will calculate for them down to the hour per day it's going to take them to do something. So they can
mm,
actually manage their time and budget for it. They can actually forecast how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take them. So they can say no to all of these other things and really charge what's
mhm.
needed for this client and stay in the work with.
And it's gratifying, I would also imagine, when they for sure know what the profitable
Mhm.
numbers are, that when a client says, "Can you give me a
Yes.
discount or whatever?" No, this is what the value of the
Mhm.
work is. If not, then I'm going to say
Mm,
no and say yes to another client that will
mhm.
value your
That's right.
contribution.
That's right.
That's so as we wrap up
Mhm.
today's episode,
Yes.
what is one takeaway, one thing, one actionable item that our viewers can
Mhm.
execute?
One actionable item, let's just focus on gross margin because most people are losing money and don't know it. And the more money you have, the longer it takes to figure this out. So, the
Mm,
one thing I would challenge you to do is go look at your expenses per month, your static and your fluctuating business expenses, and act those from your income. What is the percentage of income to expenses and expenses coming out of the income? If it is more than
mhm,
60%, then you have a pricing problem. You might have a labor cost problem. You could have a client problem. You're not attracting the most idyllic person that sees the value in your work. And if it's
mhm.
over 60%, then how can you lean it down again? Really look at your numbers. And the one number I would tell you to look at when you're calculating is your operations, which is everything that it takes to do the business except for taxes, a profit percentage, and the owner's pay. So just look at your profit category. And if it's more than 30%, you need to look and say, what can I stop spending money on? Because if it's over 30% and your gross margin is at 60% or higher, it's not going to be able to stay that way for very long. So you got to lean
Mm,
down the operations because that's where most people get killed is operationally. So that would be marketing, anything you're paying reoccurring for systems, any contractors or employees you're paying. How much does it cost you to go buy cartridges or have stuff printed? All of that matters.
Starbucks coffee is part of that
Yeah.
operational
Yeah,
expense.
that should come out of your family budget. Do we
Oh
need to talk
man.
about the laws around the government tax structure? No, I'm no tax expert, you guys. I just know what not to do because I don't want to go to jail.
If I would stop drinking so much Starbucks, my operational profit would be super high.
Probably. For you, probably. That might be very true.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate the therapy session.
Oh,
And
thank you for facilitating.
Well, folks, thank you for joining us on today's podcast episode. Join us next week as we uncover more business topics with Amy Harrill on the Amy Harrill Podcast.